my system one.
Alright, so this is the beginner's guide. Let's go ahead and just begin the game to get some talking points started. This game does rely on audio because the whole game is going to be narrated by this guy. He'll introduce himself a little bit here.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing the beginner's guide. My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote the Stanley Parable.
Take note of
while
that.
that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way.
He says first game,
And mostly it's just
but it's
Coda
just a level.
learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're
To me,
all
I think he was just
fascinating
putting
as
random
games,
stuff
but
together.
that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, you know, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made.
So he just kind of rapidly made
Until
things
one
without
day,
refining them.
He just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since.
He kind of
And
lost
that's
interest.
why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If
he
you
kind of
have a
wants us
particular
to
interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch,
motivate
you can
this
email
Coda
me
guy.
at daveywreden@gmail.com.
He even gives us an
Okay, that's
email
about it for
to
introduction.
email to.
Let's take a look at Coda's first
Screen just went
proper
black.
game.
It's gonna
As each game
take me
is
next
loaded,
place.
I'll show you
I'm
the
gonna
date
talk over
that
this
it was
guy because
completed.
I'm not gonna
This
get
first
much
one
word
was
in
made
otherwise.
November 2008.
This whole game is about this guy telling the story about his friend, quote, that began these projects for making games and just never finished really any of them. And you later get into the story of how he even found out about his friend's projects. And don't get excited, this isn't really much of a shooter.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
So, in fact, this game, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate. You can't really hear anything when you shoot. I am now out of ammo, can't reload. This is just an environment you walk through. There are no targets. And as you can see, this is just a linear pathway I'm going through. There aren't really a whole lot of choices to make in this game. I want to bring up the fact that I can't walk through this door. I wanted to bring up the fact that the narrator introduced himself as the writer for the Stanley Parable. And that is a game that's all about choices, where this game has no choices. Now, he was the writer, maybe he's just talking about like the script,
You can't even
or
rewrite the
the
dialogue
dialogue, I
anymore.
should say. The narrator in the
Most people
Stanley
leave it
Parable
open,
is actually
thinking Coda thought that
kind of funny.
maybe it was going to
But
be the way that
this
it is.
game doesn't really have any
People
humor
talk
to it.
about
It's
these
much
games
more
for what they
serious
are,
and
rather
dramatic.
than for what they're not.
Um, and the game is just like this kind of walk forward,
I love how you can
listen to
see
the
a lot of the
narrator
influence from this
talk
review.
about the stages that you're in. None of these are like completed games, they're just levels to games, kind of like concept ideas. And you just go through rapidly through a bunch of different concepts for levels.
Apparently, this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
And this guy, like as he said, he just skipped me through it. I can go back and go through the maze
Or
if I
if
really
you'd
want to.
really like to solve the labyrinth, you're welcome to do that too.
And he'll narrate on stuff if you do stuff that's weird or out of the ordinary, like how I'm trying to redo the labyrinth. He'll tell you, there's really no point to what you're doing, and then, yeah, you'll just move on from there. He also like reads in a lot to what is in these level designs. They're all just unfinished levels, and
Okay,
he'll like
this is the part that's interesting.
really
The
read
game has this
into
narrative about
find
the
a
whisper
meaning to
machine and
them.
how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Like how he just commented on how there's really no reason for the maze back there. Well, of course not. This is just a prototype of a level. This is like barely test played at all. He tries to find meaning in poor design choices, which doesn't make sense to me. This supposed person who made all these levels, just sort of made things, threw it away, and moved on to the next thing. He was just kind of like dabbling in game design. He never really finished anything. And so the game, like I said, you just walk through these environments and do nothing but listen to the narrator.
This is not a branching point, unfortunately. The only option is to step into the beam.
There are no branching paths, as he just said, which, unlike, the Stanley Parable was all about branching paths. And then the game takes about an hour and a half to walk through, and there's no real choices to be made. You just kind of have to go through what the narrator tells you to do, and if you don't do anything, then nothing happens. So that means there's not really a choice. And then the game just kind of ends. There's no achievements, so there's not really any. The lack of choices and lack of achievements, there's really no point in playing the game more than once except to re-listen to the story. And that's all you're really getting with this game is a story. You're not really getting something to play, if that makes sense. I'll just walk through the beam here. Listen to him.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
So this is the bug, supposedly. See the skybox out there. You can look down and see the level that you're flying up through.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
So he admits he doesn't know what the creator was thinking. He just kind of puts his own interpretation onto things. And there are some interesting mechanics, like this level is all about you can't move forward. You can only move backwards. So you have to navigate through the level backwards.
In this game, you can only walk backwards.
But yeah, there's no challenge to it. It's because, I mean, you're not timed. There's no obstacles necessarily.
So it's
just
a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Code is trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
So yeah, this is pretty much the whole game. It kind of has interesting ideas, but it's just telling a story. It's not implementing these ideas into a game to play with interesting choices or decisions or anything like that. So it's really not something I enjoy to do, I mean, beyond the first time I did it. And to pay full price for a game like this doesn't seem worth it to me. But I mean, that's up to you if you got, money to spend or whatever. But that is pretty much all there is to say about the game.
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that.
And this guy praises these unfinished game ideas so much because he finds some kind of meaning in them. But there's really not a whole lot to it, as far as I can see. As one who, practices trying to make stuff myself, there's really nothing much here.
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
Also, I guess I should note, just as a side thing, that there are some swear words in this game, mostly written, because you'll see text places, and then
I wish I'd known him at the time that he was.
And then I think the narrator maybe said something once.
He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
And then if you want to get into small spoiler bits, I'm not sure how authentic this story is, if it's supposed to be presented as a true story, or if you're supposed to just accept it as a fictional story that's interesting to think about. But it seemed really believable up until near the end. So I guess that's all I'll say about that. But that's all I've got to say about the game. So if you have any questions, I can ask in the comments. I can answer any questions asked in the comments below, and then if you have any recommendations for games similar to this that may be better or worse, let me know. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.